Afternoon, everybody. Today we are discussing what is known throughout history as Cinco de Mayo. Now, what exactly does that mean? Well, put quite literally, Cinco de Mayo is Spanish for the 5th of May. What does that actually mean? All right, we'll tell you. Now, common misconception here on this side of the Rio Grande is that Cinco de Mayo is the Mexican Independence Day. Mexican Independence Day was on September 16th, 1810, which basically Mexico and most of the other Spanish satellites in the New World capitalized on the fact that Spain was dead broke and couldn't hold its empire together, so they declared their independence around that time. So it is not Cinco de Mayo. What it is what happened was during the time of the American Civil War, as is known, the Confederate government was determined to enlist the help of the French and the British. Now, the British were like, no, I don't think so, to make it simple. Whereas Napoleon III, he was a special character. He, based on his name, you could tell who he's related to, his uncle Napoleon Bonaparte. The French weren't really as prestigious as they once were. He wanted empire, he wanted prestige again. And what happened was, in 1862, the Mexican government had to default on all of its loans. What that means is they were broke and they couldn't pay them back. They told the British, the Spanish, and the French, we have nothing to pay you with. And Napoleon III saw his opportunity here. Now, what was in place before then was 50 years earlier, under President James Monroe, he enacted what was called the Monroe Doctrine. Putting it in a nutshell, told European powers, stay out of North and South America. It's ours, don't come in here trying to colonize it. And the North was involved in that little affair called the Civil War. Napoleon III knew perfectly well that President Lincoln could not enforce it. So, under the ruse of claiming he was coming over here to collect a debt, he invaded Mexico in 1862 with the whole purpose of setting up a satellite state and trying to rebuild the reputation that was built by his uncle that he was this great conqueror. Now, what had happened was the heavily French troops, they were sweeping the field with the Mexican troops and the Mexican people. And what happened was, in the town of Puebla, outside of Mexico City, in May the 5th, 1862, the people of the outnumbered, outgunned, outsupplied civilians and peasants and troops, militia, were able to pretty much thwart a much larger French army. They were able to defeat them through maneuvering and strategy. And so, did that mean the end of the war? No. The French came back with bigger numbers, and they would actually continue to hold on to many parts of Mexico throughout that war. But what happened was, this stirred a feeling of nationalism among many of the Mexicans, where it was shown as they weren't able to push the French out, but it showed a national theme that they were going to make that occupation as difficult as possible. And so the war would go on actually until 1867, because what would happen was, once the United States had actually won the Civil War, General Grant sent General Sheridan 50,000 U.S. troops to the Mexican border as a basic message of either you leave or you have to deal with us as well. And plus, the war was not going well because the Mexican guerrilla warfare was really wearing down the French. So they finally withdrew in 1867. Now, to put a retort against something I saw just yesterday of videos claiming that the Mexicans were helping the United States, helping the good guys win the Civil War. To suggest that any Mexican in 1862 had the slightest interest in helping anyone in the United States would be just as ludicrous as saying somebody in 1862 Ireland would have been interested in helping someone in England. That is a level of lunacy, because most Mexicans were still pretty ticked off over what had happened 15 years earlier with the United States picking a war and invading their country solely to annex 1/3 of it. Mexico was not the slightest bit interested in the American Civil War. This happened to happen side by side. So those are a few of the things that happened on the actual day itself, Cinco de Mayo. Now, the holiday, as it's known up here on this side of the Rio Grande, where many people celebrate it, isn't really acknowledged much in Mexico. Yes, it's known what happened, and there's actually a marking of remembrance in the town of Pueblo itself. Most Mexicans don't think much of the day itself. It's something that's really only celebrated on this side, and a lot of people don't even know what it's for. I think of a movie with Cheech Marin where he came across the border with a lady from Mexico, and there's a parade going on. She goes, "What's this?" He goes, "It's a Cinco de Mayo parade." She goes, "What's Cinco de Mayo?" He goes, "I don't know. We just have a parade every year." Pretty much. So it's just something that has to do with Mexican nationalism and standing bold in the face of adversity. That's pretty much what the point of it is. Celebrated. It's pretty much a drinking holiday in the United States, and in Mexico, most people don't even think much about it. So there's some of your tips on what actually is with the Cinco de Mayo. There it is. Have a good day.